Hello, beautiful soul sister, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Powered Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Kiger. I'm a trauma-informed master mindset and money coach, as well as a financial expert of over 17 years. I have spent my entire adult life studying the difference between successful and unsuccessful people, and I plan on sharing all of the things with you on this journey together. This podcast is called the Soul Powered Podcast because it's my desire to share with you how to create a life that is powered by your soul, not by societal standards or what everyone else in your life tells you that you should be doing, but actually powered by your soul. The reason you'd want to do this is because I believe that this is the fastest way to unlock your portal to prosperity and become what I call the wildly wealthy woman. This is the portal that once you enter it, you gain access to the prosperity, abundance, wealth, time freedom, experiences, fulfillment that are your birthright. I don't believe that you came here to build someone else's dreams. I believe you came here to live your soul-powered life and live it to the fullest. And I plan on sharing with you exactly how to do that during our time together. So thank you so much for being here. I know we're going to have so much fun together today. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Soul Powered Podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca, and I'm so excited about my guest here today, which is Angela Slade. Welcome to the show, Angela. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you, Rebecca. I'm excited to be here today. I know everyone that's going to listen to this is really going to get a soul activation. So I'm excited.
Ooh, I'm excited too. Yeah, this is right up our alley on the Soul Powered Podcast, right? And Angela, actually, her brand is Rise with Angela, and mine is Rise with Rebecca. So look at that. We are so aligned. We've
Very.
been aligned from the very moment that we met. So I would love to just dive into, Angela, can you share with our listeners like who it is that you are, right? Who do you help? How do you help them? And who's Angela?
Yeah, that's always a loaded question
It
because
is.
for me, I walk my talk, so it's a transformative process, right? But for most listeners, what they're going to relate to the most is I'm a psychotherapist, and I've been in that field for about 2 decades now, and for those who are outside of that psychotherapy field, I'm also a clear channel and I'm a water oracle. So I am very
Oh,
intuitively led. And within the last 3 years, I've been bringing that forward more and more and more.
oh my
So,
gosh. That's so
yeah,
cool.
and
Okay, what
there's
is it? What is a water oracle? What is that? I didn't even know. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so a water oracle just means that I receive a lot of intuitive downloads in water. So whether I'm in the shower or in sacred bath or while the swimming laps, maybe,
Huh.
and even drinking intuitive water.
Wow.
So
That's
yes,
so cool. How did you
yeah.
discover this? Because I'm sitting here thinking like the moment that I get the biggest downloads are when I'm in the shower. So that's really cool. Yeah, I'm like, am I a water girl? And I don't even know it. How did you discover that?
It's just been a real process of me stepping into my own sovereignty, you
Yeah.
know, and really getting quiet and listening to myself because I have been, like most people, intuitive my whole life.
Mhm.
And I came in with a guide. His name was Randy. And my family really embraced him. And I lost him around the age of 5. And that's usually the time that our brain is developing further. And if we come in with those connections, we can lose them due to brain development. So I found that out later.
Mm.
And now I'm in my midlife zone. I'm in my 50s and had a real catalytic event, which I'll talk about in a minute, happen to me. But what it led me to do is go back to my intuitive leadership. It led me to get quiet and to start to really learn those subtle energies and how they come in. And I was always a water baby. My nickname was Fish.
No way.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
My dad called me Fish, and so I started to just kind of follow the breadcrumbs, right? And and then claimed it. That's part of sovereignty, is that I really claimed it because it was where those clear channels came through. Like they come through in other areas, but when I'm in water or around water, that's when I get most connected to those subtle energies. And even recently, I had a channeling that I did some automatic writing. And the reason why that path was chosen for me is because it's a very gentle and subtle way for them to communicate through my body.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, we have a lot in
yeah.
common. I love this. So okay, so how did you make this transition from like, are you still doing psychotherapy work? And what brought you into this more? It sounds like you were intuitive always, but like what allowed you to really step into that role?
Yeah. So when I turned 50, so this was 2022, I turned 50, and that same year, our boat blew up, and my husband was on the boat. And so I was at home about an hour and a half away from him in Port Renfrew, and I was counseling that day. And my husband called me off the dock and said, our boat exploded. I'm with the EMTs and I'm being airlifted to the hospital. So I had my very, very first real life panic attack at that point. I remember getting on the phone with my best friend, and that panic attack lasted a whole hour because let me tell you, if you want to know where the rubber hits the road, it's when you get faced with mortality,
Mm.
right? And it was just instant. It was a phone call. And so that was July of 2022. And in April of 2022, I had turned 50. So he was kind of facing his mortality. He's fine.
Oh, thank
He's
God. Yeah. I'm like, what happened?
he's happy and healthy, I want to say, but it rocked my foundation
For
because
sure.
it's in that moment when something really, really important is going to be taken away from you that it's just like, for
Mm.
me, shit got real, right?
Mm.
And so what happened, and he was still working, and so Mike received 23% burns to his body, so it took him out of his career. We went
Wow.
down to one income, and I had counseled all through COVID, so honestly I was coming off of burnout,
Yeah.
and I kind of got angry at the universe, and I said, yeah, no, not going through another burnout, not going down this way. And I just noticed that I slowly started returning to my soul. And what that looked like is pulling oracle cards, doing automatic writing, asking the
Wow.
universe for guidance. And I didn't know it at the time, but really, instead of this being a midlife crisis or a midlife breakdown, I was breaking through because I was just like, no, not going to do it. And
Wow.
I had always kind of followed the breadcrumbs of my soul, but so much of society invalidates it. And so
Hmm.
you just kind of brush it off, you brush it off, right? And the more I kind of followed it, I was going back to abundant stuff. This is what kind of drew me into you, right? And so The Secret and all of the things. And so I started, looking on Netflix around something to do with money. So I watched a documentary called Get Smart with Money. And a woman was on there. She was a guest, and her name's Kim Marcel. And she just happened to be a psychotherapist, a somatic psychotherapist. And she had really broke out of kind of the dominant narratives of what it means to be in her field. And it
Yeah.
was all using law of attraction and all of the things. So I tracked her down and I hired her as my coach.
Wow. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So not only was she a somatic psychotherapist, but she was embracing her intuitive leadership. She was embracing her feminine. And I just thought, you know what, Ange, instead of following fear, I've got to follow frequency.
Mm.
And because, you're going down to one income. It's kind of like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And yeah, I hired her, and she really helped me start to break up some of those dominant narratives of the conditioning that was in me, that where I was sitting in psychotherapy, I was never feeling quite right with it. But what I realized is like, if we stay in that healing modality, we don't ever truly break free from the healing. And
Mm.
so it's like we have to do that deconditioning of society, culture, family in order to really take back and remember who we are. And so she was the catalyst for that. And
Wow.
then, yeah,
That's
yes,
amazing. So,
yes.
how are you helping clients now? Are you in this now more intuitive work with the work that you do with people? Like walk us through how you're supporting your clients.
100%, right? Because I've always been the one that walks my talk, and I've talked that all the time throughout my life. And so it's like, okay, now there's this opportunity in this opening because I didn't want to go back to the 2020, like the 2020 burnout that I was experiencing. Counseling through COVID was really, really tough, like
Mm,
on all of us as therapists. So I just kept following the breadcrumbs, and Kim helped me build Rise, which was a 12-week mastermind program. And it was built on, she pulled out these concepts for me in terms of intuitive leadership, women's empowerment, and I built this 12-week program through my coaching with her, and I launched it. And I had 8 beautiful women come into the program, and that was it. Like, I was hooked. I was starting to kind of bring myself forward, talk more openly about things because, if you're a psychotherapist and you're in academia and you're in structures and you're in pathology as well, right? It's kind of, people just look at you sideways, but these women just fully embraced it. I was able to bring in somatics, neuroscience, but also I started getting them interested in oracle cards, pendulums to help them understand their internal yes and no.
yep.
And something amazing just happened. Like, these women just flourished. And so I thought, oh, this is amazing. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I went on to then hire my next coach, and I had watched her whole entire career, probably right from the beginning. So Shannon Kaiser, she's an author of several books, but the first book of hers I ever read was called Adventures for the Soul. And I've always wanted to write a book, and it wasn't necessarily that about Shannon, but what it was about Shannon is that every time she showed up on social media, every time she showed up in my newsletter, she was just owning her shit. And
Mm,
so if she was transforming through something, it was not real time, but she was sharing those authentic parts of herself, right?
mm.
And she's well known in the United States, so she was a huge, huge investment for me. And I just thought, no, I keep upping my frequency. So, like, I got to embrace the fear and I got to upgrade my frequency. So I hired her. And
Yeah.
then through her, and going through the book writing process, I started to see where I was playing small. I
Mm,
started to see where shame was shutting me down. So it was like, okay, here it is, next level, new devil kind of
yep.
thing. And I
Yeah.
launched the second Rise Mastermind while I was working with her, and I had 12 women come in. And so,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And then that led me to James. I kind of want to just, I'm doing this through coaching and just like frequency, right? Because, like, this all costs money, as you know, you and I were talking about this yesterday. But then somehow through synchronicities, James got on my radar, and he's a business coach, but he also has that spiritual side to him.
Mm,
So I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, because like all this hustle and masculine energy in business, just it's not the way I want to go. But there was something about him that just kind of drew me in, and like, this man's so full of the woo woo, it's not even funny. And
yeah.
I ended up getting into like the most amazing community of people. And through throwing it out there to have people come on my podcast, I asked for women that have had pain to purpose stories and that were doing soul led work. And that just blasted the doors open. So,
Amazing. Yeah,
yeah.
that's amazing. So, how does someone know that they need to work with you? Like, what does that look like? What is the typical person who comes to you and they're like, Angela, I need your support?
Well, I always say the way that I've been shifting it over the last 3 years, it's through flow. It's not through the hustle or the marketing. So I find the people that are drawn to me or attracted to me, they'll find me on social media. They'll start tapping in or start interacting with me. They'll find me through word of mouth. My clients, because again, I always will bring it forward and I'll show up. So it's more what I've noticed in the last 3 years is people hear something, they resonate, they vibrate, they start to get curious, and then they come to work with me. So I still have a small private clinical practice. I've been slowly working my way out of that. But as I step more into owning my intuitive gifts, that's kind of birthing in Rise. And I'm just getting ready to actually launch Clarion Soul Activation sessions. I trained in
Oh,
Holy Fire Reiki lately, just recently, with Ilana Sparrow, who is a fellow BBDer.
okay.
And yeah,
Wonderful.
she's also coming in to guest speak or guest teach in Rise. So yeah, it's been unfolding. How do people do it? Why? It's mostly midlife women, and I think it is because I am a midlife woman, but also that's a point in women's lives where they start to reevaluate things. Maybe
Mm,
their kiddos are launching. Maybe they've had some really big things happen to them, like I did with my husband's accident, but parents start to get sick at that time. So there's lots of transformation that starts to happen in midlife. And I know for myself, and I can say for the women I've worked with, you just get to a point where it's just like enough is enough. Like I want another way, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So this fire, okay, wait. So what's the Reiki that you've learned?
Okay, it's
Holy
called
fire Reiki.
Holy Fire Reiki.
Oh,
Yes.
cool. So you're starting to do sessions around this and offer
Yes.
this as like a la carte type of thing? Is this separate from your Rise container or how does that work?
So I will start doing some one-to-one sessions, but it'll be brought into the Rise program with the women because I want them to be able to have access to not only the science, the neuroscience, to help them understand how their body emotionally regulates or how their central nervous system works or how their brains work, but I want them to experience the woo woo, the feminine way, right? It's just like, and be able to work with energy and feel that energy. What we know from science, this is specifically attached to the Heart Math Institute, is that our heart has an energetic field that's 5,000 times larger than our brain,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that our heart has the magnetic amplitude 60 times more than our brain. And
Mm,
so our heart is our energy center. And if we want to really work with whether it's wealth frequency, feminine wisdom, wholeness, our soul, we really want to work with our heart
yeah.
because you talk about sending out energetic frequency. We want to be aligned there. And so Reiki helps with that. And it helps to bring heart coherence into a group, which is even more potent. And
Yeah,
so
that's really powerful.
yeah, helping women to understand and experience that, right? It's embodiment. You probably know this well,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. So, can you give us like an example of someone that maybe came in and worked with you and experienced some of this transformative work that you're doing and like walk us through kind of their journey? Like, where are they now after somebody's work?
Yeah. There's so many beautiful women that have come through this program, but there was one woman in particular where it was just so amazing to watch her transformation because she came in, she had made a large life decision to leave her husband, who had some, I'm going to just say narcissistic traits because, I'm not going to diagnose, but just
Sure.
kind of like that dynamic. But she, in midlife, her enough is enough was that she was going to divorce and find herself. And in the process of doing that, she had come into Rise. And shortly after coming into Rise, he received a terminal diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. and she had just recently shifted, away from him. And she was an empath and an intuitive. I could feel her right away when she came into the room. And watching how she navigated that with the frequency of love, let me say, because she went on to transform herself and tap into her intuitive gifts of her own. She continued to help her husband all the way through. He's passed over now. And because she was in Rise with a powerful group of women who could speak the same language and support her to tap into higher knowing, she could be challenged about maybe some old beliefs or some old conditioning that she was in. She was able to honor herself and she was able to honor her ex-husband.
Mm.
And after the fact, she's actually one of my mentors now. So she was in the second rise and she's coming back into the third rise, but she was able to speak publicly about it on my podcast. And just how much she learned about trusting herself and loving herself first and filling her cup first and being sovereign and fully embodied within herself. It allowed her to help him and her children. And so
Mm.
that passing, it was just like beautiful. Like he had a really great passing. And here's the thing, she'll speak about it. He comes back and visits her.
That's amazing. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
probably a guide, I'm sure, right at this point.
And
Yeah.
he's humorous. So she'll tell these stories
Yeah,
and
that's
yeah,
wonderful. I
yeah,
often wonder, like, yeah, there's certain people who come into our lives and, they're family members and things, and you experience them one way when they're here. But I often wonder, okay, so someone who wasn't maybe that, let's just say like my father, for example, I don't have a great relationship with him, but I often think, well, what, when he does pass, wonder if we'll be closer, wonder if things will shift, wonder if things will change, because at that point it's like, there's all the ego's gone, right? For at least for
yeah,
him. And so, there's it may be some different ways that we can communicate. I think it's really cool. It's a cool concept, right? Because I think that we live on, of course. I mean, I know we live on after this. So you've mentioned the word sovereign a lot. So I'd love to hear, like, what is your
yeah.
definition of sovereign and what does it mean to be a sovereign woman? And what does this mean to you? And why is it important?
Yeah. Well, in its simplicity, the first thing that kind of comes to me is sovereign is freedom. It's inner freedom, right? So that's the simplest definition of it. And the way that I work with women in my groups and even in my practice now, sovereignty is about, even as if you're the mentor or you're the one leading, is to drop down into a collaborative space so that person finds within themselves their own power. And so sovereignty is about really developing inner trust,
Mm,
inner acceptance,
yeah.
self love, but all of those inner things so that you are in a space where you gently learn to stop abandoning yourself.
Hmm.
And part of sovereignty, the sovereignty work, this was the real transition for me where I'm just like, I understand why I have to leap from psychotherapy. Because with sovereignty, we go through the dark feminine.
Mm,
And the dark feminine is really about understanding and then deconditioning all the ways that we've been silenced,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
All the
So
ways
true.
that we've been taught to play small. And you talk about, because wealth is your thing, we all have an innate wealth frequency inside of ourselves.
Hmm.
But without understanding the societal, cultural, and familial conditioning,
Yep.
we don't tap into that. And healing only takes us so far because we can, when my husband had his accident, I could go back to trauma therapy. I could have went back to my wounds. I could have went back to all of those loops or even of over analysis. But something in my soul said, not today, sister, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was the dark feminine that started to take me there. So part of sovereignty, to truly embrace your strength, to truly know how to regulate yourself, to stay connected to yourself, part of that is understanding the conditioning. It's undoing. It's remembering, right?
Yeah.
It's like, when you get a resonant hit and it's like you just remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that explanation, and I think it's so true because we're born, and that's what they talk a lot about in this space, which is like your birthright, wealth is your birthright. And what does that mean? And this is what you're talking about here. It's like reclaiming what was always yours. And we don't come into this world questioning whether or not we're good enough for our mother's milk. It's like, no, we just know we are, right? We know that we
Yeah.
are worthy of having all of the things. We know we're deserving of it. It's unfortunately through conditioning, both societal, like you said, familial. There's a tremendous amount of conditioning and programming that we go through. And I think that the beauty of life is, and I've just fallen in love with this process. I think that it's so interesting. It's like we come in knowing who we are, and then we learn this mask and this whole like set of programs that isn't who we are. And then we spend the rest of our life trying to figure out, find ourselves again, who we actually always have been. It's just a really cool, like, okay, I guess that's like one of the main purposes of life. Everybody wants to know, like, what's my purpose? What am I here for? And this is part of it. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, it's all in there. This is not just reserved for, spiritual woo-woo oracles. Like this is every single person on the face of the planet. You have a
Yeah.
purpose, you have, soul power. You have this ability to access your birthright of all of those things. And I love that you kind of tie that all in with that word. It's like reclaiming your own sovereignty. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and we have to do that through creativity, through play, through joy, through curiosity. And so when I work with women, I'm always kind of like, okay, we're going to play here. Like, engage me in this. Like,
Yeah.
go and see for yourself. Like, for example, one of the things that I returned to was going back and really looking at my astrology and my human design. And, that part of it for me too. And so I invite people to go and just see, does it resonate for you? Like, do you get some ahas? Are you getting some real yeses in your body? Because
Mhm.
we can just, part of the dark feminine is the taboos of women who have practiced spirituality or esoteric wisdom over the time. But come back and tell me about it. If tarot cards aren't for you, they're not for you, kind of thing.
Right.
It's like, let's build your own curious toolbox, but I'm going to
Yeah.
give you some things to go off and look for. Because when I remember in my first Rise group, like it was just kind of like all these like pushback, like I could feel it. The women, it's just like, and one of them came forward and said, like, we only talk about that in the kitchen with my mother and my grandmother. And I'm like, I know,
Yeah.
right?
Wow. That's
But
interesting.
go look at your astrology, go look at your human design chart, see if it resonates. Like a yes in our body is very expansive. It's
Mhm.
very, we usually know. Sometimes it's subtle, but if it's not for us at this point in time, there'll be resistance, there'll be contraction,
Yep.
right? And that's the energetic field that we're working with inside this meat suit.
Yeah, it's so true. Our bodies are so unbelievably wise. And I think that a lot of us, for me it was a process of deconditioning, like you said, the trauma, because the trauma, right, the old scripts that are running can sometimes be confused for intuition because they both live in the body, right? So our trauma responses, our nervous system responses, all of that, all of those stored protective programs and patterns, they make us sometimes feel like, oh, this is actually my intuition. Or like, so how do you, because this is a big topic that we dive into as it relates to money within, side of my signature program. But how do you distinguish, just for, the sake of conversation here, if someone were to be like, I don't know if this is my intuition or if this is anxiety, right? Like they're very, it's a very distinct difference, but how can you kind of explain that?
Yeah. So, what I want to encourage everyone to do is to get still, to get quiet, So if we're going, and we're trying to instantly figure it out, you're in a survival, you're already in a survival stance in your body because you're grasping, you're hustling, any of that type of energy. So it's really and really, really important to get quiet and get still and to learn to make these decisions for yourself from a place of neutrality or emotional regulation, I'm going to
Mhm.
say, right?
Yep.
And if it has to be quick, what I want to say is it's not your intuition if it's coming from a place of fear and anxiety.
Yep.
It is your intuition if it's coming from a place of courage and vulnerability.
I love that. Yeah.
So that's an easy way to think about it. If we're, as we get, I know as I get better with it, I don't have to get as still. But for listeners, that emotional regulation part is so important to discern, is this from my past or is this, something that's pulling me forward? Does that make sense?
Yeah. 1,000%. And yeah, this is something, like I said, we go into in depth. And I just remember like a specific, very distinct experience of this where it showed up in my life. And so just so you guys can kind of see how this shows up for all of us. But I remember when I became a master practitioner of neurolinguistic programming, so NLP, I remember signing up for the training and I was like, okay, I'm ready to do this. I tapped in with my intuition. We were all on board. Everything was good. And then there was like a 6 month waiting period between the time that I had signed up and the next training. And I live in Pittsburgh. The training was out in California, and I will never forget how much fear. I mean, it was like a couple days before the event, I all of a sudden started feeling an overwhelming amounts of anxiety. And it was right before the election in 2020, I believe. So whatever. It was right before the last election, not the most previous one here. I don't really, yeah, I'm not whatever, not 2024, but the last one before that, yeah. So it would have been 2020. And there was a lot of unrest, people were rioting and things were happening. And so I just allowed all of that energy, because I'm an empath too, to just really it was completely overwhelming. And I was like, you're gonna die. Like, you're gonna go here, you're never gonna come home, you're not gonna, like, you're
Mm,
gonna get stuck there, whatever it is. And these crazy, I mean, I'm talking about like the most intense thoughts that I had thought in such a long time. And it's really interesting because I was like, I know this is my ego. I know this is fear. I know this is anxiety. And I know what's going to happen as a result of going to this. I know that there must be something transformative. And sure enough, when I went, it was to date like one of the most transformative experiences of my life. And we did deep, deep work around healing these wounds and like letting go of all that anxiety and just all of these different things that I never had addressed before. But if I would have listened to that voice, I was like ready to cancel. And those kinds of things don't happen. They get less intense the more that we heal, right? I don't experience it to that degree anymore. But
true.
just to kind of give you an example, like these things do show up. And so knowing that I at least knew to tap back into who I was when I made the decision. And I was like, okay, we were at peace. We asked, right? We tapped in, we knew this was right. And so it's just interesting how it shows up. And sometimes it does feel very sudden and it feels very like fear driven, like you said.
Hmm.
So settling yourself, getting into that emotional regulation, really sitting with that truth is vital. It's crucial to make sure that you're going in the right direction and listening to the right voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And a quick test for this is to put your hands on your heart. So, again, your energy center, and go stand in the mirror and then speak the truth out loud or speak what's happening out loud. And that mirror will reflect back, some emotions that will be coming up in the body. So maybe it'll even elicit tears. Maybe it'll
Yeah.
even elicit sadness. So we have a thing called mirror neurons where we're always interacting with each other. But
Mhm.
I tell my women, go do this stuff in the mirror. You really want to get
Mhm.
deep into your soul? Tell me what happens, but also hold this space in your heart. Because if we can drop down into here, you'll come into a resonance field, right?
So
So
powerful.
So go
Oh,
try it. But yeah,
I
you're
am gonna try that.
absolutely
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's so cool. I love that. So fascinating. We could go on forever about this. I'd love to
Probably.
just give you the opportunity to chat and share with our listeners, like if they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about Rise, they want to learn more about this work that you're doing in the world. Where do you hang out the most on social media or, your like wherever they can find you, kind of share any of that information.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, angelaslade.com is my website, and you'll find all my social media handles there as well. My most active community is over on Facebook, which is Rise with Angela. And if you head to my website, you can sign up for a oracle card spread that I created, and it's called The
Oh,
Authentic Self. So if anybody's curious about playing with oracle cards, that's
yeah.
one of the things that you can get, and it helps you to start tapping into your authentic self. And the cool thing about that is it turns on intuition, and it also taps into your subconscious mind. And
Wow.
so yes, it
That's really cool.
does.
I'll have to go check that out.
Yeah.
We'll
And
definitely
then
make sure we link it.
with Rise, the third cohort of Rise is starting April 13th, 2025. And all I say to anyone listening today is that if you're feeling a yes, or you're feeling a whisper, or you're feeling a call, go check it out, because what Rise is all about this year is, helping women tap more into that feminine wisdom, their wealth frequency, their wholeness. And, every time I rise, the women rise. And this year I've got 5 beautiful guest speakers and teachers coming in, you being one of them. I hope that
Hmm.
that's okay to confirm.
Yeah.
And so you're getting spiritual mentors. We're doing transformative breath work, and you're going to help them with that beautiful word called wealth frequency, because it's all possible. It
Yeah.
exists,
Yeah.
So follow your yeses. Like, when that accident happened to me at 50 years old, I could have just crumbled and fell on the floor and went back into burnout, hustling because my husband's income was off of the table. But I chose a different path. I chose the feminine path, right?
Yeah.
I chose the soul path.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much. Thank you so much, Angela. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything else coming through that maybe I didn't ask about, or anything that you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up today?
I'm just kind of tapping into the energy. My body is really sounding off. And, the message I want to give anybody that's listening is you're worth remembering who you are.
Mm, that's so good. So, so, so good. Thank you again so much, Angela, for your time today. I really do appreciate it. Guys, definitely go check her out. You can see that she is an expert in her field, and I can't wait for you to just learn more about her and her work. Thank you all for tuning in today, and we will catch you in the next episode. Bye, everyone. Soul Sister, thank you so much for tuning in to this entire episode today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a favor and leave a quick review? This allows me to reach more people, and if you found value, I know others in your life will too. Also, be sure to share this episode on social media along with your biggest takeaways so I know what resonates most with you and I can keep the good stuff coming. And if you're looking to dive into a deeper connection than this podcast will allow, consider checking out my Rise to Riches experience in the show notes below. I would love to hear how these messages have helped you take one step closer to living your soul-powered life and becoming the wildly wealthy woman. Sis, let's continue to rise together. I'll see you next time. Bye.